Hi everybody, we're back with our friend's 1969 Volkswagen Beetle. Today we have a few sort of miscellaneous things we need to do on the car. We need to fill the transaxle transmission back up with fluid because it leaked out a bit when we did those seals. And then I want to take the car out for a little tootle and see how we did with the brakes. That could be exciting and certainly entertaining. And then after that, I think the stick shift mechanism feels really bad on this car. It's super stiff. So I want to figure out what's going on with that, if it's the actual shifter mechanism itself. I don't know. It could, hopefully it's not something in the transmission, but we'll just need to figure that out. I do have other things to do on the car as well, but let's see if we can get through those problems and see where we are. Well, since we swapped out the seals on the differential here, we did lose a little bit of fluid, and I think the level in here is a little bit low. So I'm going to use my little pump guy here. We just open up the fill plug on the side here and pump in until we get a little bit coming back out. That's all we're doing. If you'd like to see a full episode on swapping out the fluid in your transmission, I did an episode on that. I'll go ahead and link it up above and you can check that out. There we go. There we go. Put our tube in there. Yeah, we got a little bit leaking out. We can throw our plug back in. You don't want to cram it in there, but you don't want it to leak. There we go, that feels good. If you do see a little dribble coming out of it, which you probably won't, but if you did, then you could just get up there and just sort of nip it up just a tad more. All right, well that's that. Let's go ahead and get the car down on the ground and take it for a little tootle and see how we did with those brakes. Before we go out for a little drive, it dawned on me I have another task to do, and that is the valves on the car. And the valves should always be done when the engine is stone cold. So I can't do it if I go out for a drive and come back. So anyway, let's go ahead and get to the valves. Now I did a full episode on how to do the valves. I'll go ahead and link that up above again so you can see that. This is going to be a little quick and dirty, but it's pretty simple process. We pop our distributor cap off. We rotate our engine to top dead center cylinder number 1 to get started with. And then we're going to go backwards 180 degrees each time. Since the firing order is 1, 4, 3, 2, if we go backwards, we'll be going cylinder number 1, 2, 3, 4. And that puts us on one side for 2 cylinders and then on the other side of the car for the other 2 cylinders. Super easy. Cylinder numbering in this car is 1 forward, then the rear is number 2 on the right side, then on the left our forward is number 3 and the rear is number 4. All right, so I've got the engine set to top dead center cylinder number 1. I've got our valve covers off. Let's go ahead and check our valves. I've heard it can be a little bit easier to do your valves if you have your wheel off. Now generally because of this 4-post lift, I don't bother. I just do it from the inside, but I thought it'd be kind of neat to take the wheel off and see if it makes it any easier. And we do have really good access to our valves. So one of the first things I like to do, this is cylinder number 1 here, number 2 is back here. These should be a little bit loose. And you can hear that clicky clicky? That's good, that's a good thing. We'll check our clearance and see where we are. Oh, that feels perfect actually. Just the right amount of friction. That's the exhaust. Let's go ahead and try our intake. And I'd say that's almost a little tight. Yep, that's a little tight. I'm going to go ahead and loosen that up a little bit. And we just use a 13 millimeter here to loosen this up. Sometimes it's a little weird finding the actual slot. There it is. Tighten that guy down. All right, that's what we're really looking for. Just the right amount of tension there. Test it again. Yeah, that feels much better. Well, that's cylinder number 1 all taken care of. Our next step is to go back to the engine, rotate the engine counterclockwise 180 degrees and set up for cylinder number 2, which is going to be this guy here. So the first thing I want to do is test the brakes. I've got kind of a flat area here. I just want to make sure they're actually working. Get a little bit of speed. It's pulling nice and straight. That feels good. I'm going to kind of do that a few times. Oh, that's better. You know, it's hard to tell if the bearings are any better. I mean, they're brand new all around, so it should be pretty sweet, right? I can't really, it feels great to me now. Everything feels fine. I didn't really notice it before, which is probably bad, but it feels good now. I've got a hill here I want to go down and give a try, so. Boy, that shift linkage though, we got to work on that. That's not great. It's a reasonably steep hill. I'm going to keep testing the brakes, make sure they're doing their thing. Feels pretty good. Seems weird. All right. In gear? Yeah. It's so hard to tell. All right. Feeling a little bit better. Well, I'd wondered if the stiff shifting had something to do with the transmission being a little low on oil, but that doesn't seem to be the thing. We filled it up and it doesn't feel any different, so it's not that. It does feel smoother, especially at speed. I'm not hearing any grumbling or growling at all from the wheels. That's a good thing. So I think the bearings are working well. Nobody behind me. I'm gonna do a little brake test again. Yeah, that's better. All right, let's go ahead and turn around. Another opportunity here to test the brakes. Yep, they feel good. It's a very strange noise. What is that? What is that noise? It's very weird. Well, that was weird. There's some kind of weird noise, almost like from the fan, maybe? I can't really tell, so we'll have to figure out what that is. That's very strange. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Well, the good news is I think the brakes are working fine. I think they're good. But we have a few other things to work on. So let's get back in the garage here and get things set up. I pulled the back seat out of the car because I wanted to get to the shift coupler here. There's a cover that goes over it and a single screw here, and that I've removed to expose the actual shift coupler down here. Now, as I move the gear shift lever back and forth, it's still really stiff. And I'm wondering if our problem is back here. So I move this back and forth. It still feels, of course, very stiff, but the idea, what I'm trying to figure out is it this shaft here or this shaft here that's bad? And I can still feel it's very stiff even when it's not quite moving. So you can see there's a bit of play in the shift coupler itself. That's actually normal. The idea on that is so that it won't transmit rattles back from the transmission, although it's kind of doing that in second gear. But that's the idea. But even if this shaft isn't moving or the whole shift coupler isn't moving, it still feels super, super stiff. So that makes me think that it's not the shift coupler or anything back here. It's forward of that. So I think my next step is going to be to pull the gear shift out and see what's going on with that. I'm going to start by leaving the car in third gear. There we go. That way we know which gear it's in, because I'm going to have to pull these two bolts here to pull this whole shift linkage out, and they are also used for the adjustment. Go ahead and pull these bolts out. There we go. There's a spring and a ball, and this is kind of what it looks like down in there, and it's yuck, huh? Not so awesome. Well, I'm going to start by taking this to the workbench and we'll get this cleaned up. I think I'm going to need to pull this shift mechanism out as well. Before we remove the shift rod, we need to remove the shift coupler in the back first. I started by removing the safety wire from the pin that locks the coupler to the shift rod, and that's really just to get it out of the way. Next, I worked on removing the cross bolt there that actually attaches it to the shift rod. Now it's a little weird. It's basically a lag bolt in a sleeve, and you need to use a pair of pliers on the other end to hold on to it, or you can use an open-end wrench as well. Once that's a bit loose, I went back and removed the pin in the back just so I could rotate the coupler a little bit and move it around, because it's a little hard to get that bolt out when it's still attached to the shift shaft. With the lag bolt out, you can pull that sleeve out from the left side there and then just lift the coupler up over the shift rod. Well, I did a little research on how to get that shift rod out, and you're not going to believe this. This is crazy. I've never seen this before. You believe it, I guess, if you have one of these cars and you've done this before, but I've never pulled the shift rod out of one of these things before, and it's crazy. So in the front of the car here, do you see that round access port? Never knew what that was for. All right, and as we go up here, look at that. Another access port. That's interesting. Then under the car, well, it's actually missing. But do you see that hole right there? That's where the shift rod comes out. It comes out through there, through the other hole, and then finally through this hole. So I'm going to start by removing these access ports. And as I just showed, the one actually by the torsion tube is missing. It shouldn't be. That's a huge place for water to get in the car. So probably have to source one of those at some point. All right, let me get these little covers off, and then the next step is going to be to try and get that shift shaft out. The problem with it is it's so stiff, I can barely move it. It really should be completely loose, and I'm just completely lost as to why it is so stiff. But we'll figure it out. Well, here's my idea. I have this super long extendy pole. I think it's going to be long enough to get to our shift linkage, and there's a little hole in the end of this thing here, and I'm going to put wire ties through it like that and hook up to it, and then I'm going to pull it out the front. Okay, well, let's give this a try. And insert this guy in here and go straight through there. Continue on. All right, we should be far enough. Let's take a look. Well, here's our cup ball receiver here, and I heard that the best way to do this, you can kind of see this is pretty high here, and it's just not going to clear this welded on nut that's on the bottom of this. So I heard that the best thing to do is kind of turn it upside down, or at least on its side. All right, and then I need to move it back a little bit. Oh boy, that's stiff. So I can get to our yellow rod here. I'm gonna have to pull that forward a little bit. All right, here's our end, and here's our wire tie. So we're gonna wire tie this guy on. It's around, make sure it's around the right spot. Nice and tight. Rotate that guy back down again. I carefully pulled the rod through. The last thing I wanted was that wire tie to come loose. I had a microphone malfunction, but all I'm saying is that rod was super sticky. It was like uncured epoxy. No wonder it was so difficult to shift. Well, it's a few days later, and the owner has dropped by some parts for me to install. Yay! And I've cleaned things like this shift rod. Now, this shift rod has a bit of a bend in it. I don't know if you'll be able to kind of see it, but it's kind of strange. It's a bend right about here or so. I was very curious about that, whether that's correct or not. It does look like it's an actual original part. It actually has the little Volkswagen emblem right here and the crux here, but I don't know. I was like, well, is that rod supposed to be bent? And with this car, you know, anything's possible, I suppose. Well, I commented to an episode of Duckman Cycles where he installed his rod in his car, and I was mentioning that the rod that came out of this car was bent, and he said, oh, it's supposed to be bent. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I got some confirmation that evidently it's supposed to be bent, so that's good. Kind of makes sense. It all lined up pretty well, but you know, I don't know. I just really wanted some confirmation. Now the rod had grease on it, which is correct, but it was super sticky. It was like uncured epoxy almost. It was just, and so when the bushing, which is this guy, this kind of orangey guy, was trying to slide up and down on the shaft there, it was just terrible. So we have a brand new bushing here, which is great. I've got this rod completely clean from one end to the other here. And also, let me talk about this. This is the lockout plate that goes underneath the shifter. So the shifter just kind of sits on top of its lockout plate here like this. La la. All right. Now I'm not sure if this one is original or not. I kind of think it is. It's a bit different than the one we have to replace it. So here's the one I'm going to replace it with. It's a bit different. Doesn't have the bends on the end, little different shape, but the lockout tabs here are about the same, so I think it's fine. I'm sure it'll work just fine. But the reason I'm replacing it is, take a look at this. So right here, there's a bad crack right there, and this tab has been bent over quite a ways. And I know that if I was to bend it back, it would just snap right off. So I think this plate's kind of had it. So we'll definitely be swapping it out with this new one. As far as our shift coupler goes, the owner has one on order. The place where he gets his parts didn't have one in stock. I think this one is fine, honestly. They're pretty basic, really. Kind of weird. They have like a lag bolt on one side, and they're just kind of a little strange arrangement here, but it doesn't appear to be overly worn. I think it's probably fine. And that leaves our shifter, the actual shifter itself. Looks like it's in pretty good shape. There was a lot of powder coating or some type of black paint sort of all over this thing, all over the ball, and on this little bell here as well. So I cleaned all of that off really well. I just want it to work as smoothly as possible. But the rest of it looks like it's in good shape. Rubber a little bit down here is fine, and the gear shift knob looks fine too. I think the whole thing's fine. Good enough, right? Our first step is going to be to install our bushing here. Now there's a little bracket that hangs down just aft of the shifter here with a hole in it, and that's where this guy goes, and that's where we pulled the old one out of. We just need to reinsert this guy. You always want to remember to put in this metal ring that's on here as well. That's very important. And weirdly, you know what? That's a different part number than the actual rubber bushing is. If yours came out and it's missing that metal ring, you want to make sure that you get a new one of those as well. I'm going to use just a little bit of silicone paste. I know I use this stuff in pretty much every episode. I'm going to put just a tad on here to help push this guy in. I think it's going to make life a little bit easier. Now the next question is, do you put it in like this, or do you turn it around and have the slot at the bottom? I'm going to put it in with a slot at the top. The reason being is that when you push down on the gear shift lever to go into reverse, that little bracket there becomes the fulcrum point, and I think I want to push on the bottom of this without the slot when that rod's in there, if that makes any sense. But anyway, I'm going to put it in with the slot facing up. Now it's a little, it's the Braille method here, so you're gonna have to kind of find your way, find that bracket, get it on. All right, it's part way on, and then just push it in until it snaps. Oh, there we go, it wasn't that bad at all. Okay, so now we have our bushing in. All right, now with the bushing in, we're all set to begin to insert that big long shift rod back into the car. We're going to need to catch it though as it comes through here so that we can get it through our bushing. And I'm going to use some wire ties here down in the base, and I'm going to try and capture it and then pull it up, and then that way when I push it through, I can guide it in through the bushing. Looking down the tunnel here, we can see our target back there. There's our ring all the way in the back. We do have a few obstructions. We've got that, whatever that tube or cable or whatever that is that's hanging down. I have to deal with that. In preparation of installing our shift rod here, I'm going to coat it with a little bit of grease. I'm using this black lithium grease. I think that's going to work pretty well for this. And it's really just going to be a coating. You don't want to lather this stuff on. You just want to just coat the thing a bit. I think it's as much for rust protection as anything else. And don't worry too much about the bushing and lubricating the bushing. Right before we get pretty much to the end, I'm going to put a little bit extra on the rod so that that bushing has a bit more grease. All right, our rod's all prepped. We can go ahead and insert it now. Okay, insert our rod here. There we go. All right, well, we'll run our rod down here. Oh, and there is our bushing. Maybe we can get in from here. It's a little dark down there, but I've got my rod pushed in and it's actually sitting on the very beginning of the bushing there. Okay. Whoa, see, I knew the rod would move. Now we need to feed our rod back into the bushing. Here's is all sort of the Braille method. I think at this point, I'm going to add a little bit of grease to the very end of this guy. Hopefully that'll make it go through the bushing, and I can also put a little in the bushing itself. Line it up on our bushing. Boy, it's close. I just need, it's very hard to get any traction. Try pushing it from the front here. There it goes. All right, great. Took a little friendly convincing. Looking through, all the way through here and up into here, you can see where we are there. We're pretty darn close. With our rod in a good ways and through our bushing, I'm going to use a broom handle here to push it the rest of the way. All right, and go. All right, I think we're pretty close. All right, we can pull our wire tie guy out. We've got the rod in position. Let's go ahead and install our actual gear shift lever. I'm going to start by putting a good dollop of grease inside this cup here. Make sure there's plenty of grease in there. But you know what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull my shaft out just a little bit here, and I'm going to add a bit of grease so that it gets on that bushing. Kind of forgot to do that, so we'll go ahead and get that good and greased right here. Looks pretty good. Our shift rod back into position again. There we go. And turn it right side up again. Now we're good. Yeah, that feels really good. So we've got a good bit of grease on the shaft and in our ball cup there. Let's take a look at our shifter here. We also have this surface here that we want to lubricate. Go ahead and lubricate this as well. Now it rides up into this cup up in here. So that's what we're lubricating. We'll go ahead and lubricate the end of this as well, the ball that goes into the ball socket down there. And then this as well, because it's going to be riding on our shift plate. Looks pretty good. We want to fit our spring, which goes on like this, I believe. There we go, like that. Next, I'm going to set our lockout plate. Now it has a wider tab on one side and a narrower on the other. You want the wider side to be on the passenger side or the right-hand side. We'll fit this guy in here. There we go. Get it sort of lined up. There we go. Kind of line up our ball there. Great. Well, we're all set here. We can go ahead and install our actual gear shift. We want to push our ball down into our socket. There, spring goes over the top, and this should go pop. There it goes. That's in. Yeah, and we can feel it moving. That's great. Add our bolts here. Now we don't want these tight just yet. We just want to make sure that they're on and threaded. Okay. All right. Oh, that feels really good. Okay. Next, we're going to get to the back here and hook up the shift coupler. Back here at the back of the tunnel, we've got our rod back here. We're all set to put our coupler on. That's this guy here. So we just want to fit it over the center. Okay, let's get our pin here. There it is. Fit that guy through. All right. Now also I want to mention that we've got our screw hole for our lock pin at the top here, not underneath. Just something to be aware of. All right, and with that pin in, maybe we can start to screw this screw in. We might have to kind of work it both ways a little bit. Kind of meet it halfway here. All right, there we go. This does actually screw in. It's a little strange, but it does. Now on this side over here, I actually have this thing semi-captured on this side with the edge here. That's just helping me to get this thing screwed in all the way. Okay. Now we're in pretty close here. I'm going to slide this guy up over there just to support it. We can even put our little pin in just really quick like a bunny. Okay, now let's get this guy tightened. All right. And this is a 15 across the wide flange of this guy on the other side here. All right. I think that's pretty good. This is a 8mm, this little guy here, across the square. Okay. The only thing left to do back here is to install our safety wire again. All right, and we're all done back here. And finally, we need to now adjust our shift linkage. That's why we left this thing nice and loose. Remember, when I pulled this thing out, I said I put it in third gear. There was a reason for that. That way I have a good idea just sort of where this thing, just as a starting point, should be. So let's go ahead and put it in where third would be. It's right about there. And we'll tighten this down a bit and see where we are. Let's see how this feels. Oh, it feels so much better. There's first and second, third and fourth. What about, the big one is always reverse, so it's down this way. That's reverse. It's a little bit hard to get into. There we go. Not too bad though. Bet this could be a little bit better. Yeah. First, second, oh nice. Third and fourth. Oh, very nice. And then this way, and well, it's still a little hard to get into reverse. Okay, so there we're in neutral. Down, over, and back. I was trying to get into reverse from second gear. That's always very difficult. All right. It seems a little as though the plate could shift forward a little bit, because if this is neutral, it should be pretty vertical, and it's more vertical in second, I think. It's pretty good though. Boy, is it, oh, it feels 1,000 times better. Oh my God, that is so much better. There we go. All right, that looks a little bit better. Neutral, first, second, third, fourth, sweet, back into neutral, and boom, reverse. Sweet. I'm liking that. All right, let's go ahead and lock this down, make sure it's good and tight. Well, that's our shifter sorted. Wow, it goes right into gear. Oh, it feels so good. What a difference. Look at that, right into reverse. Oh, it's awesome. Okay. All right, well, I'm gonna call this episode, it's getting a little long in the tooth. In the next episode, I'm gonna be installing a new muffler. That's going to be a thing. And then we also have a new distributor to put on the car. So that's gonna be fun too. So you're not gonna wanna miss any of that. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below and I'll get right to them. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that now. Hit the little bell next to it to be notified, because we've got more content on the Beetle coming out. And then we are getting back to the 911. It's been a bunch of starts and stops on the interior, but I think we have a plan now. So we're gonna be moving forward on that very shortly. Well, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, safe travels. Bye.